All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Martha Alter Hines, and I am here yet again with Chris Skidmore. Hi, Chris.
Hey
And
Martha, hello everybody.
we're here in our matching shirts, not planned, but pretty awesome. And so, most of you, if you have been with my YouTube channel for a while, you know Chris very, very well because Chris and I work together a lot and we do a lot of videos on our own together. And then we also do lots and lots of videos with Melanie Reinhardt, who's a very dear friend and mentor for both of us. And yeah, but lots of you are new to the channel. So I want to reintroduce Chris for any of you who are new to Chris. And first of all, so Chris and I both happen to be astrologers, craniosacral therapists, psychotherapists. We have a lot of similar ways that we approach the world and clients and our work. Chris also has a beautiful podcast that I highly recommend called On the Soul's Terms. And the thing that is, I would say, we have so much in common, and then we each bring in these complementary sides to things. And the thing that the gift that Chris brings in that I'm not an expert in at all is the mythology aspect. So, and I've said this many, many, many times, but Chris is, I would say, the first person when I first met Chris. Chris was the first person to introduce me to Greek and Roman mythology in a way that felt deeply sacred and healing and like a needed thread of coming home to ourselves. And so I want to name that very explicitly because for understandable reasons in the astrology world, in the world, there's, really big narrative that Greek and Roman mythology is bad, or we should get rid of it, or something along those lines. And I really firsthand understand some of those ways of feeling about it. But Chris really brings a gift to the world in your way, Chris, of being with this mythology. And so I just want to name that very explicitly, very clearly, really celebrate you and thank you for doing that. Um and of course just thank you for who you are on the planet.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad we came in with our matching green Asclepian shirts today.
It's my favorite color too.
Um, yeah, if I can just comment on that, it's something that I find myself wrestling with because um, I think I think what happened, if I can give a sense of what happened, is that stories became like parables. They became the sorts of things where it's like, well, we'll teach you how to be and what to do and what's good and what's bad through story, which is a fine way actually to use story. I'm okay with it. That's not what the Greeks did. The Greeks did something very different and very kind of special actually, and they drew their mythology is separate to their culture, right? Now their culture may have all sorts of troubles with it and all sorts of beautiful things with it, but that's a separate thing in a sense to the mythology, which is very much a dreaming, collective dreaming process. Storytellers around campfires, mostly women, I imagine, being the old women have always been the crones have always been the story keepers. And so telling stories and elaborating and elaborating. Now, some people wrote them down, and that's what we have. We have the poets who are male that wrote them down, but the stories themselves are not written down really. When I tune into the stories, they're not written down anywhere. They're not trapped on a page. Sometimes one of the most beautiful things that can happen is that you misremember a story, and that misremembering is exactly where that story needed to go. It's beautiful. It goes off in this other direction, and it doesn't affect the central story because the central story is solid in itself. It's been woven through thousands and thousands of years. And also what the Greeks found is that when they went to other cultures, which they did, the golden, what did they call it? Like the golden path or something, like the trade route that went sort of all the way over to the east and all the way back. See, at this time, there was no such thing as a jealous God. There was the sort of thing of, hey, our gods are like your gods, and our goddesses are like your goddesses. It's like, oh, I can see Isis. That's like our Aphrodite, and that's like your Ishtar, and that's like your Inanna, and like it's all that they all could share with each other. And so you would see like this deep sharing because everybody essentially wanted to get the most out of their mythology, and it would weave in between all of these multiple cultures, and what we get left with is this. We're so blessed and lucky to have it. And so when I see people write it off, it's like, wait a second, because you're not just doing that to it, right? You're doing that in your side of yourself because your soul knows this language. And to my point, it's not moral. It's rather than like, here's what you should do. The Greeks had a kind of story that was like, here, look around. What do you see here? It's not telling you what to do. It's like, here's something that could happen. Like Medusa, right? She gets frozen and has snake hair. Okay, that's something that can happen. And if that happens, one would want a story in which to bounce that off. Oh, I'm in freeze. I need a story in where a mythical figure is in freeze, but amplified, times 1,000. Because I'm not made of stone now with snake hair, and every time I look at someone, they freeze. Because that's Medusa's story. But I feel like that. I can relate to that when I'm in freeze. I can relate to being isolated and cold, and everybody I look at kind of gets a bit scared of me. But the Greeks just amplified themes like that. So for me, it took me a long time even to like a long time standing at the door, classic apprentice master kind of thing, right? Like a long time just standing there. If you've ever seen Doctor Strange, the first one, it's a very good image of that. He just stands there at the door, and he's like, they like, no, we're not going to train you. And he just stands at the door, like, I need to, and this is what I need though. And they keep saying to him, no, this is not, there's nothing behind this door. You don't even know where you are. You don't know what you're talking about. And they keep telling him, like, no, 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 no. I feel like I stood at that door for 20 years. And when it opened, I was like, oh my God, there's so much gold in here. And so like you said, I understand why people write it off, because it seems like Zeus is God and it's the start of patriarchy and there's all this rape going on, and like they're condoning all of that. It's like the Greeks aren't condoning or repelling anything. It's like Hermes, the guide, walking around with you saying, like, check that out. What do you think about this? What about that? Hey, look at that. Not like you should do this to be a better person, or what about behaving like the Good Samaritan, or it's not moral. And it's not. That sentence makes sense in multiple levels. Yeah, very immoral things happen from men to women and from women to men within Greek mythology all the time. But in the same way as it happens in fairy tales. Like there's something of the vividness of violent images that actually pulls us in and helps us make sense of our own violence that's happened in our lives, whether it's been happening to us or we've done it to someone else. We can make sense of that. We're not being judged within Greek mythology. In fact, we can't be judged because all of the gods and goddesses behave terribly a lot of the time. And that is actually for me, and this is what I always come back to, I was raised Catholic, and to just know that a God can behave really badly is very soothing, healing for me, because when my God never does anything wrong ever, I bounce myself off that and I can't do anything wrong ever. But I'm a human that's flawed. So what am I going to do? What's going to happen to me?
Yeah. And a way that I've come to through my process of, learning with you and listening to these mythologies myself, and is that I've finally, where I'm currently with it, is that I feel it. I feel mythology in general, not only Greek and Roman, but all mythology essentially as um existence being held in like a craniosacral hold, right? And it's just like dreams. If you imagine we go to sleep and our being, our psyche, our whole being is being held in our sleep dream time. and then the energies move. And then as these energies move in our sleep time, we have dreams. And often the dreams don't make any sense and they might be very violent. And so might do something to such and such, and it makes no sense. And we wake up and go, what? Right?
Yeah, yeah. And we usually just shake it off. It's like, oh, that was terrible. And we walk away from the dream like, oh, whatever. But actually, as you said, it's like, and that's how I see astrology as well. It's like being moved by mythology and it moves mythology, right?
Mhm,
That's been
mhm,
the thing that has freed astrology up from the page and put it back in the sky for me, right? It's freed it up because this is how we learn. And we because of computers, we don't have to make a chart by hand, which would be one planet at a time. So we would be seeing the chart forming slowly. If we're doing astrology 40 years ago or more, or maybe less than 40, then we are drawing it up by hand. Now, that's something that when we speak to that next generation that have used to do that, they don't miss it, of course, because it takes a lot of time out of their work. And now we just go bang, 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 right? We just put in the details, bang. And then all of those planets appear at the same time and they're stuck on the page. It's very
mhm.
hard for astrologers to not get stuck on the page with them, to not get crystallized, to not get concretized or literalized. And mythology helps us not do that because if you stay literal within mythology, you're doomed. How could you be literal? Like none of these things happen, and that's the way mythology is. It's like that definition of mythology, right? It's like things that um, never happen but always are,
Mm.
right? Never was but always is. It's that kind of thing. It's a timeless thing. And true mythology feels timeless. And not true mythology just feels time stamped. And it's like a story.
And speaking of that, timelessness and mythology. So we're actually, in a minute, we're going to switch to our actual topic of this video. but but in March, we're going to be holding a free gathering to dive into exactly that, right? So so the big picture is that Chris this year has been part of my Astrology 101 course, and then starting in April, we're going to be doing the Stars Speak course together. Um, and so we're going to go into so much more about all of this in the Stars Speak course. But in March, before that, we're going to be holding a free gathering. Really, what I think is wanting to happen in that space and that free gathering is really to go back to the beginning of time together in our own being, and in a sense to be getting held by existence itself, the ultimate craniosacral hold, where we go all the way back to the beginning of time, even you could say like the center of our own galaxy, boom, and we land there, right? And something again, as I've been feeling into the stars, I've been feeling into mythology, and what I realize is, oh, okay, where does mythology really start? It starts at the beginning of time, at the beginning of existence. It's like, where did mythology get born? It got born when we got born, really.
Yeah.
You know, anybody who could create story, that it came from our own souls. And so
Well,
anyway,
and to
yeah.
just add to
Mhm.
that, like the journey out of the womb is the journey from the ocean out onto the land, right? I mean, that's a mythical moment in itself. So that happens in every individual life. We've been in the big ocean, everything's been taken care of, or the cave, however you want to see the womb, everything's okay in there, like all our needs. And then we're born, we separated from that. That's our first mythic moment.
Yeah.
Happens to
Right.
all of us. It's the only way onto this planet for now.
Yeah. So it feels really important to me, to help us collectively. That's really the purpose of this free gathering, is to collectively feel that, to feel that could call it the still point, the ultimate still point of the beginning of time, where we begin, where life begins, where our galaxy begins, and where mythology, where story begins. Not just Greek and Roman mythology. I mean like mythology, like the story of life. And anyway, we'll say more about that later, but that exists, and please join us for that. Um, I would love to switch to, we're here to talk about Uranus, and
Yeah.
to to use Uranus as an example in this moment of yeah, of how I can really feel how mythology serves us, right? Even this Greek and Roman mythology can serve us in the moment we're in. Should I switch to that for a second?
Let's switch to that, and I'd love it if you can start with like the moment what Uranus is up to today, right as we're
Yeah.
recording this, the Aquarius new moon. You know, it's pretty kind of special Uranian, and of course we might be experiencing that as like discombobulation or dissociation, and the all of that could be happening for you. So I want to also bring in like, hey, we're here for that. We're also experiencing that. We're not, this is part of what Martha and I do in our work. We're not separating ourselves out from the human experience in order to talk about the human experience. We're talking about it from right in there, where in the world to we are going through this chaos, turbulent time with everybody else.
Yeah, because we're human. Because
We're
we exist.
human. But part of what you said there, just to bring that into a little bridge into our Uranian discussion, is what you're talking about there is chaos cosmos. And chaos is the beginning of all things, but the way that the Greeks saw chaos wasn't necessarily the way that the modernists refer to as chaos. Actually, not just, I said that a bit lightly. That's not how they saw chaos.
Right.
There was still something about chaos that was disturbing, but right in the very heart of chaos, like you'd said, right in the very beginning of things, which chaos is just the beginning of things, is this other thing called cosmos. And cosmos means a divine order, and cosmos is also the heart of cosmology, which is mythology. And
Mm-hmm.
all of us, every culture throughout time, every single culture has an origin story. Even
Yeah.
our Western culture, and it's called the Big Bang, and that's our origin myth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's always an origin myth. Nobody on this planet right now can just straight up prove to you that Big Bang happened. So it has a mythic component to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yeah, so to
Doesn't mean myth in the sense of not true. It means myth in the sense of it's myth. It is true, but it may or may not have happened. Unclear.
yeah. And this is a totally different road, but I've interviewed, for example, Jude Currivan, who is a quantum physicist from Oxford, who has written books about arguing that it's not actually a big bang, it was a big breath. And then she goes back to the beginning of time, like literally the beginning of our universe, and explains why scientifically she would actually reframe that narrative, reframe that story, not as a big bang. So there you go, right?
And that's why, ultimately there's mythos and logos, and this is how we make sense of the world. And
Mm,
just because the modern world has separated itself out from mythos and made mythos this bad thing and wrong and associated myth with untruth and lie, because that's what's in the vernacular right now. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can try to do that, but it doesn't work because it's always and always will be, always has been logos and mythos, logic and myth are the way we understand things. That's why if if we're trying to tell stories at the beginning of things, it'll be mythic. It'll have
mm,
to be mythic. Because what information do you have, right?
mm. Yes. Okay. So we could bring that to this moment that we are in today,
We get
um, that we're all in. Okay, so today we happen to be recording this. My time it's January 30th, 2025. For Chris, it's January 31st, 2025. And but today, in the last few hours, Uranus has gone direct. And yesterday was the new moon in Aquarius. So this is a highly, highly, highly Uranian time. And we have Pluto having just moved into Aquarius. You and I did a video on Pluto and Aquarius, and I think you and Melanie and we've done lots of stuff.
yeah. Lots of things about in the archive.
Go back and see all the things. There are many
Yeah.
to enjoy. Um, yeah, so this is, Uranus and Aquarius are getting big attention right now, and we can feel it, like, right? So on the one hand, a sort of, you could say, shadow side of a highly Uranian, highly Aquarian time can be high anxiety, high fear, like a dissociative tendency, or like I could say, I just to ground it on a slightly personal level. One thing I've been dealing with in my own life is, I live in the United States and there's lots and lots of stuff going on in the United States that we won't talk about directly, but right. So I have people close to me in my life who are really doing the dissociative thing. And so every time I hear that, my body starts to jump. And, it's very, very nerve-wracking. So nerve-wracking can be a very Uranian experience. And I keep having to bring myself back down to Gaia, which is what we're going to get to in a
Yeah.
second. Right? So this is Uranus going direct in Taurus. Okay, so
Mm.
those are the potential, like, what is the moment we find ourselves in? That's where we are. Is this highly Uranian, highly Aquarian time, where there can be this sense of very discombobulating chaos, etc., and a tendency to do the dissociative fear thing. So now in comes in comes mythology, in comes this conversation we're about to weave together. Go. Is
Okay, wow.
that good? Okay.
It's very good. I just want to spend a little time with it because we're going to be talking about dissociative states. So it's going to be very possible for us to accidentally dissociate, right, while we're talking about those states. So that's very possible. And we just need to, and for our audience, therefore, to also do that. So one of the things here is like we've got to remember Taurus is the sign involved in this, right? Taurus, and the Taurus square to Aquarius is sort of like some of the energy. Taurus is ruled by Venus. We'll be getting into Venus and Aphrodite pretty soon. Um, and of course, Aquarius is ruled by both Uranus and Cronus or Saturn. Um, so here we are in that tensional point, and the thing is to slow down for all of us. It's like, you know what, you're not going to get there any quicker by speeding up. I think it's just like one of the key elements that it's been like one of the key messages of wisdom over this time when Uranus is in Taurus is like, if you want to speed up, you're going to have to slow down, right? If you want to get going and awakening and, like, because we're on this path, right, as earth beings and spiritual beings, we are here to awaken. And if you want to do that awakening, you got to slow down. So I feel that of something on the almost practical Taurian level, like we can't leave the body behind. The body's coming. The body's coming with us. And so that kind of brings us to like, well, where did Uranus come from? Right? Where did this character come from? And who is this mythic character? And I mentioned before, like it's been a confounding image for astrologers to the point where many quite famous astrologers have said, you know what, maybe it was misnamed. Maybe this planet was misnamed and should be Prometheus. That's very bold of a human, I think, to make a statement like that. And something that Jason Holly said about that is that that's a way of not really staying with the image. But if we do stay with the image and we say like, oh, it can't be just an accident that it was called Uranus. And if we stay with the image, we'll find there's plenty of gold within this little piece of mythology. So I will also want that mythology to be slow because I want to gather up all of the things. So I'll just end it for us. I'll just put the bookends in. It's like when you read the start of a book and you're like, oh, I want to read the end of the book now. And then I can read and I can relax into the middle of the book. Let me read the last page. Yeah, that's the cranial hold. So the first page, and where he starts, is that he's born out of Gaia. So Gaia has been born out of chaos. So this is the chaos cosmos thing. Gaia has been born, Eros has been born, and effectively 3 forms of night. 5 things born out of chaos. Gaia being one of them, Eros being one of them, and of course we know from that Gaia wouldn't really be able to continue her creation if Eros wasn't involved, because in order for creation to keep going, things have to be attracted to other things. So that's Eros, because otherwise, if there was no Eros at the beginning, Gaia would have this really luscious beginning and then stop. It would be nothing would be getting together with anything else. That's just nature for you. And these three forms of night, well, they give birth to day, and all these other things happen over that other side. Back to Gaia, though, for a while, she's just creating on her own, she's spinning around, creating. It's quite fun. She's enjoying, Eros is there, so she's able to enjoy, oh, look at all this stuff just kind of creating. So I think the word is autochthonic, maybe. Anyway, it's something like she can create by herself. And most intact mythologies have a creator goddess who can create by herself, because that's what it feels like, by the way, when we're in the womb. We don't think, oh, yeah, and dad. We just think mum. We just think mother. We don't really associate in the womb, or in that deep dreaming, that dad is also involved in this all that much. We know that mother is involved because we're literally inside of mother. We're inside of the great womb space. But then she seems to sort of get bored or something. Something happens. She's almost like, this is cool doing all this creating on my own, but I wouldn't mind. One, I feel like I need a little bit of protection out here. And two, I want to mate. And three, I want something pretty to look at. So in her own genius, she gives birth to the sky, and that is Uranus. The Heavenly Father with the crown of stars is a direct translation into modern language from the word Uranus. Heavenly Father with the crown of stars. That's the translation. Don't forget that one, if you can. But whenever you hear Uranus, or however you hear it, Uranus, it means Heavenly Father with the crown of stars.
I love
Beautiful, beautiful, and then suddenly, oh, bang, the sky's lit up. Gaia is very happy. She's got this beautiful lit up sky. She feels protected. She feels companionship. She feels love. She feels that connection. Now she gets to experience Eros, right? But the thing she created is very different to her, but she likes that. There's some polarity going on between the two. It's a very good thing. That's the bookend number one. And the bookend at the end is that at the end of Uranus's mythology, what is born from, and I don't know any other way to say this. Are you still with me?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. You were so still that I was like,
I'm
is this,
mesmerized. Keep
you're
going.
like, it's really still. Anyway, just the audience should go back and see just how still Martha was. That was really beautiful. I was like, it's stalled. At the very end of
I was being Gaia.
yes, you were. At the very end of the story is the birth of Aphrodite. Okay, I don't even want to get the details of that right now, but Uranus is involved in the birth, or maybe the rebirth of this almost like Aphrodite in this form is like something like the ocean and the earth and the sky all coming together as one being, who's the most beautiful image anybody could ever imagine. And imagine is right, because nobody gets to have her, because she's Aphrodite Urania. She's Aphrodite of the heavens. She's the one we all long for. She could be any image you want her to be. She could be male, female, other. It doesn't matter. She could be anything you want her to be. And she is available for your projection of the most beautiful thing you could ever imagine. And she therefore creates the longing for that thing that I think maybe I or all of us have a sense like there's something of us in this one, but I can't grasp it. It's too much. It's too unfathomable. So she, with her creation, creates the great, deepest, most profound longing. And she is synonymous with a deep longing that is all spiritual traditions kind of come back to that deep longing, I think. And that's the book and story.
And
Yes, go.
she's just to say this because most people I don't think realize this, because I didn't know this until you told me this in the last few months, right? There are two different Aphrodites. There's
Yeah,
this, which is the Aphrodite Urania, and then there's
yeah,
the Aphrodite Pandemos, which is what I think we typically think of as Aphrodite.
Yes, exactly.
Do you want to
Exactly. So
explain?
Aphrodite is born of Zeus and Dione, which is like it's such a funny way that she gets born because Zeus essentially goes on a narcissistic kind of binge or something. Because Dione is the feminine form of the name Zeus.
Oh, yeah,
And
right.
we don't really know anything about her. So you can kind of imagine that Zeus is like kind of maybe created a woman that's like him, because he just wants to go into a narcissistic thing. And out of that gets born Aphrodite Pandemos, Pan, all, Demos, like democracy, all the people. This is Aphrodite that is achievable and recognizable and erotic and physical and sensual and sexual and all of those kinds of things. You do to get involved with that Aphrodite in a sense, right? Like for better and worse, because it is narcissism that brings it on in the first place. Don't forget. But that's that one. Now the other one, and this is the separation because we got to make that distinction because if and so much pain and turmoil and destruction that happens in this world is the not making a distinction between those two Aphrodites. So you don't realize that the one that you're with in physical form can never be the Aphrodite of the heavens, and nor should she be. Actually, the Aphrodite of the heavens is like some kind of muse that helps you to create and helps you to give all of yourself to your work and to your life and to your kids and to your family and to everything, right? Even to your partner, because you have that energy is already going back and forth in some kind of a beautiful connection between you and the divine. It's
Mm.
beautiful feminine form. And she is, in some ways, the other side of Uranus, the planet. Now, much more so to me than Prometheus is the other side of the planet. I can see Promethean energy within Aquarius, the archetype, but I can't see him within Uranus. But I can see, because it's even in her name, Aphrodite Urania, in the other side of, because it can be the most disturbing thing, right? The other side of Uranus. Like Uranus is a disturbing force. I'm not going to let the planet off the hook here. Totally disturbing. But what's the disturbance on this side? A deep longing for some kind of like ideal form that I get confused about. And what's it on the other side? Well, shock, change, this kind of thing. So both of those is to me where that Uranian impulse, and it is like an impulse going back and forth between those, and that's what makes it such a great ruler of Aquarius, because you can sort of feel that, and we'll be able to find out if we go deeper into the middle part of the myth, things that apply to Uranian energy from within the middle part of the myth, between bookended by Gaia on the one side, Aphrodite on the other.
Go for the middle.
Go for the middle.
Is that where you want to go?
Well, I think as we're in this moment, it's really important to just like associate that everything needs to be associated because we are in a collective dissociative moment. So we need to keep associating. So the best associations that we have together, I think, besides the cranial, which is in the background of what we do, is the astrology. And so this is very relevant to this moment right now because Uranus is stationing direct in Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Aphrodite, right? It's ruled by Venus. And we've just had this new moon, plus the nodes change and all that kind of stuff. It's a big moment. And so, like big stirrings are going on.
But
But
even, sorry, just
yeah,
even in Uranus stationing direct in Taurus, we have right there Uranus, Gaia, Aphrodite, all three. Boom. They're right there. Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Gaia is there.
Gaia, Taurus, Earth.
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
Gaia-ness of Taurus. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes,
Hmm.
exactly. So Gaia is there. That's
Hmm.
right. And in some ways, well, Gaia or the Earth is in Leo, right? Because you look at it wherever the sun is, the opposite of that would be where the Earth is. Just to bring
Mm-hmm.
one more thing,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of popped up off my head. So
Opposite of,
on
yeah.
end, it's like reconnecting to Gaia is like so essential for this time, because if you can have that connection to Gaia, then it's just very natural to have the connection to this beautiful starry sky. And you know, like that's, and then at the other end is a longing, and I feel this longing pretty much every, I mean, like, I don't want to time stamp how this longing comes up, but I long for that sky. I got to see it in the desert of Australia once when I lived out there for a brief period, and it's amazing. It's better than any Netflix show. You just stare at it and it's telling story after story after, you know, you just stare at it. It keeps telling you stories.
Yeah.
It's like that's where the mythology was stored. And
That
we've severed
is
ourselves
it.
from that.
Right. And I would actually to throw that in even, right? It's like, wow, I of course. So if we are Gaia, we are Gaia, we are the cosmos too. We are all of it. But okay, well, yeah, really, where did the mythology come from? Maybe we were lying on the earth, Gaia, looking up at Uranus, the stars, the crown of stars, right? And then births the stories. Literally, I
Yeah.
mean, mm,
The other term for him is the vault of heavens. See, this is such a beautiful figure, and it's so misunderstood.
mm,
Imagine this vault of heavens. So all the fates are up there, you know. This is fate before the fates are born. That we're staring into the sky and we're wondering, like, where did we come from? What are we? Are there other things like us out there? And then we feel the loneliness too, right? Because there's something about staring out into space that's also terrifying in a way. This is the other side, right? Of the deep longing for something, some other, some twin. You know, all these relational signs will point to that, Aquarius being the last of them. You know, Aquarius is the longing for something divine. Libra is the longing for the other. And Gemini is the longing for the twin. These relational signs are so like, it's like they can't get to their depths because they can't get to the longing. That's often what happens within relational signs, like air signs. It's like if they could only get down to the longing. I have a
mm,
client who he loves Ludovico Einaudi. Do you know who that is? The pianist, the
no.
Italian pianist. It's beautiful music. It's really powerful. And he's sort of like, you know, come out of a relationship, and he bought two seats in the front row and left one empty. And I was like, this is so beautiful. You don't understand how beautiful that he left it empty just in case he meets someone, right? But it ends up empty. And it's like, hmm, you know, that empty seat at the in the concert, and you're in the space of this beautiful music and you have an empty seat next to you. Like that's the thing.
Mm. And then I'm thinking of, I was talking to Melanie the other day, and she brought up that Uranus is the esoteric ruler of Libra, right? And it's like, like to feel into
Yeah,
that too is even in that image of the empty seat, somehow that feels Uranian. I don't know why, but
it does. I don't know why either, but it does, right?
Mhm.
The empty seat. There's something kind of quirky about it as well. There's something kind of like unusual about buying two seats in the first row.
Mm, mm, mm. It's like, but there's a magic to it, like a
There's a
spark.
ma And there
Hmm.
is a magic to Uranian consciousness and Uranian energy. And I think one part of it is it's trying to connect us back to fate and then connect us back to earth, right? Connect us back to the fates, which takes a lot of pressure off because this is an energy that's opposite the Leo stuff, right? Which is like the heroic. This is it's written in the stars. And we still have terms like that. We say things like that, but we don't really know what we mean these days. But there's something deeply relaxing, and this happens a lot in Greek mythology. The poets would write about these kinds of things, like the actual relief from the suffering is when one accepts one's fate. That's
Mm.
when this new form of free will comes about, when we say like there isn't any, there's just my fate. But we have to get that on the poetic level because it just settles the whole system down, and then we can rejoin our fate, and then we can rejoin Gaia, and we're going backwards through time. Ding, 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 ding. And now we're in that space between, oh, it's Gaia and Uranus, and this beautiful harmonizing. You were doing it before, of like the sort of like infinity symbol, yin yang, moving in between. It's like, there's not a lot to do.
Mm,
There's not,
mm, mm,
and a lot gets done, because I'm not talking about apathy or laziness or anything like that. I'm talking about there's not a lot to be the doer for, but there's a lot that just gets naturally done when there's that kind of a communion. And I just, in the last few days, I've been like, that's why I love Cranio so much.
mm,
That's why when I was learning it, I was like, oh my God, this form of magic is my
mm.
favorite form of magic. Because what you realize is that you get all the doers out of the way, all the fixers out of the way, and then something happens inside of the body, and it's just reorganizing itself as though it already had an inbuilt intelligence that
Yeah,
it was just we were in the way of, an
and
inbuilt intelligence.
Uranus has to do with intelligence, right?
Yeah.
But Uranus in yeah. And this brings me back also. Um, I think I mentioned this to you a couple of months ago, and I made a video about this actually at the time of the United States election in November. Again, you know, there's this very understandable tendency for a lot of people to get very scared and dissociate. And so again, I'm not going to go into the political, but it's there. And what I made this video about was that the thing that really came to me, like on the morning of that election, I still have very strong feelings about it. I'm not going to deny that. And and but I went into deep, deep, deep prayer the day before and the morning of. And what I kept getting shown over and over and over again, I'm still shown the same thing over and over and over again. It was Gaia who basically yanked me down, and she said, okay, look. And she was very stern. It was this
Yeah.
very like almost angry, like she was pissed. And she said,
Yeah.
okay, you're missing the friggin' point. She's like, yes, on one level, like there you want a certain thing to happen. Okay, sure, that's fine. But no matter what happens in that level of things, you're forgetting about me. You have forgotten about me. And the real point is me, Gaia, that no matter who wins whatever kind of election or blah, 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 the bottom line is you are out of sync with me. And you are basically therefore, out of sync with your own being, your own body, your own self as Earth, as Gaia. No matter who wins this thing, the task is still the same. And I'm serious about it. And I'm pissed. It's
Mm.
like, oh my God, okay. Okay, okay, I got it. I hear it. So it seems like today, as Uranus is going direct in Taurus, right? It's the same. It's like we need to slow way down. Come.
Yeah, and that's why, part of everything that you just embodied there for a moment it's Saturn. And it's
Mm.
understandably Saturn, because Saturn is the ally of Gaia.
Oh, right. Mythology here. Yes. Bring it in.
It's the ally of Gaia. And not only that, but Hera, the next mother that comes along, the next matriarch, is also associated to Saturn. So Saturn, I'm sorry to say this, guys, is not masculine.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a feminine force.
Mhm.
And that's why Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, is the Gaia Uranus, because Gaia represented through Saturn, Gaia Uranus connection. That's
Mhm.
the mythical undertone of that connection.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So, Uranus is out there, and he's in the sky, and he's being pretty and beautiful, and he's creating he's doing everything he's meant to do. He protects Gaia, because some of the things that come flying through space he can deflect, right? So she's actually even more able, now that Uranus exists. She can be even more creative, and all this like beautiful things are happening. And for an undisclosed amount of time that could be eons and eons and eons, potentially millions of years, this just goes on. just like this. And I think it's important to rest our system that this kind of homeostasis, this kind of connection was there for a very, 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 very long time. Before Uranus looked down, he's like, what is that? And he made his first judgment. So he stood above and stood separate from and was like, I don't like that. Because now the things that are being created on Earth are created through Uranus and Gaia and their connection, their erotic connection. So now he's involved. So now this is some of his children. And so what happens when he looks down and he sees like these cyclopses, ugly monsters? He's like, oh, no, no, no. And he sees the hecatoncheires with 100 arms and 50 heads. He's like, oh. We can imagine for a little while, he's like, I can probably just accept that those are there and it's okay. I'll keep doing my skyfathery thing up here. And for a little while, he ignores it and then he can't ignore it anymore. And he just doesn't like this. He doesn't like that something not perfect is being produced by him, who he sees himself as perfect.
Mm-hmm.
He sees himself as perfect. He sees his relationship with Gaia as perfect. He sees the 12 Titans they made as perfect. Nobody's taken a step wrong. And suddenly these monsters are happening here. What's this about? So you know what he does? He oppresses, he depresses, and he represses, and he suppresses. All of those words have the pressing, and that's what he does. He takes these monsters and he pushes them down. He pushes them back into the earth because he doesn't want to see those. And that's the first troubling, disturbing moment, is actually the moment when we say as individuals, this is wrong. That's the moment. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be saying it's wrong when it's wrong. That's exactly right. You know, that's just the complexity of all of this. But there is a moment there when it's like a wrongness comes in. And that's often a Uranus transit is like, whoa, where did that come from? You know, something comes out of the blue, right? Almost like the asteroid gets past Uranus's protection and hits the Earth, which is your body, and hits your psyche and hits you on often quite tragic and intense levels. And don't forget that when, 2011 happened, when Uranus finished its 84-year cycle, that was Fukushima, when Uranus came out of the ocean, shook the ocean up, a tidal wave comes and hits a uranium plant, as in that kind of energy. What am I talking about here? Uranus just stole from me a word. But then that whole thing happens, right? Like at that very moment when Uranus crosses over from Pisces, the ocean, into Aries, the sort of like explosion. From the ocean to the explosion, that is actually a historical moment. If you want to look at the moment that Uranus crosses over from Pisces to Aries, that's the day. I know because I was living in Taiwan, which is very close to Japan at the time. And so it was it was big worldwide news, Fukushima. But imagine that as an image of that, right? So it can be extremely shocking when Uranus actually misses one of these things and is no longer able to protect Gaia, and Gaia gets hit by something, or even worse, when Uranus himself becomes the oppressor. And this is the moment mythically when Uranus becomes the oppressor, and it starts this whole saga. It starts this whole set of conundrums open up out of that. And that's also in our own souls, And oftentimes when I'm in myth, it's like the invitation is to the listener of like, where is this getting you? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? What are you stuck on? What's the moment in this story that you just can't get past? Or what do you feel in your body? Or what is this reminding of you of? Or what's the resonance in your life? And rather than do the crime against mythology to say like, well, that's that then, as in you make one analysis and then that's all the myths got. That's how you kill myth. You say, for me, this reminds me of this, and then you allow it to open out and unravel that one thing. But that's not all of this myth, right? So that may take you to a particular place and unravel something for you, but the myth in a year's time can take you to a different place and unravel something else for you. The myth itself can shapeshift and change into whatever figure you want it to be, but it will never be imprisoned. Never, cannot be. It's too watery to ever be imprisoned. It'll slip through the cracks, and before you know it, it's mythologizing itself all over again.
Yes. So where does it take you?
It takes me to the destabilizing kind of collective field. It takes me to the shaking and the earthquaking and the, all these things that are happening, wars and fires and political madness and all these kinds of things that are just going on. Like it's all rupturing everywhere, it feels. And it takes me to like, yeah, it can take me to like it's too much, and takes me to the dissociative, where you get taken out and away. And then, but because it's already in myth, it's like, oh, but my dissociative state has a place, because it's mythic. And so then it's not the last place that I'll be, you know. And then because it's mythic, I can return and then take my time and slow down and have a good look around. And but it definitely takes me to the shakiness of things and what happens, not when there's two things. It's like there's either when Uranus is doing the pressing and the pushing, because I can feel that in my own body of like where I repress and suppress and push things around. So I can feel that in my own Gaia, which is this thing, that I am and I'm in. Um, and what happens when I'm hard on myself, or I demand perfection from myself, including physical perfection or something like that. It reminds me of that. It reminds me of just like pushing myself around, this Sky Father energy is like, and the desire to break out of that and break free, which is also a Uranian impulse. But it also reminds me of what happens when the protective father, the protective Sky Father, has a lapse in concentration or gets a bit lost or confused, or maybe isn't being honored or sacralized, or there's that he loses his sacred place, and so he doesn't protect. And then in that lack of protection, guys just getting hit like by all these meteors and things, because that was Uranus's job. But where is he? So I think the wound of the modern day is the absent father, the father that's somewhere else doing something else, but like not like in the centuries past where I can go to father's workplace and check it out and see what it is. Father's doing something really obscure that I can't understand. And because of that, I don't relate. And because I can't relate, I can't build the temple to Sky Father. And because the temple isn't built, doesn't feel honored. And because it doesn't feel honored, he gets confused and lost. And because he's confused and lost, I get hit by things that shouldn't really have hit me if Sky Father was doing his job.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah. Well, I bet pretty much everybody watching can relate to almost everything you just said.
It's a collective story,
Yeah,
but it's also deeply individualized.
exactly.
And we all know what that's like, I think, on
Yeah,
some level.
definitely. Yes, personally, collectively, all of it. Definitely. And something else just in terms of mm, a way of framing this that might feel soothing or helpful for people is as you're talking, I'm also feeling something that um you and I have sort of you and I've been naming just on a more personal level of the sense of how do I put this? That we can approach. Okay, so I think part of what we're talking about is that in life as Gaia, there is both the perfection of the divine, right? And then there is the trauma of the earth world. I mean, it's just true, it just is.
Yeah.
And when we feel the fear and the terror and all these things that are very understandable, um, part of what I think we're feeling in that moment is a lack of being held. So something you and I have been talking about, again, more off camera, is the sense of, okay, but what if, in a sense, you're always held? Like there's always this, sometimes it's easier said than done to feel it, right? But in reality, there is always the, you could say, the craniosacral hold of existence. It's true. Like even if even if we don't always feel that, you could say, I mean, the divine always exists, source always exists. Um, so something that we've been talking about is like, okay, well, what if there's a storyline going on? Like, let's say this storyline we're talking about here in the collective. And what if there's this holding, this craniosacral holding that just is, and like a membrane, like a healing membrane, right? And this everything you just described, like, that's what you're feeling in your body. What if we collectively have this understanding that we can remember that we're always held in this ultimate divine craniosacral hold, and everything that we might feel in this moment, we can place it in that healing membrane of whatever word you want to put on it, the divine, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly that shifts everything, right? If I'm feeling you speaking, and if I were to imagine you speaking that into a void and there's nothing there holding you, it feels very terrorizing, terrible, right? But I don't feel that. I feel
Mm.
you here, right here, and very definitely held
Mm.
by the divine and by our connection and by this conversation. And so I feel everything you're speaking into that healing rhythm. Um, and therefore it has a place. It has a place to land, and it's being held, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't, anyway, my logic train just ended right there, but does that make any?
Exactly. Yeah. And, I think what happens in this last part of the story, because I'll just get that out there so we can, find ways of closing from there,
Yes.
is that Cronus, who's the youngest of Gaia's children, who we know as Saturn these days, has a sickle. He has a sickle, which is a crescent moon shaped tool given to him by Gaia. And it's like a crescent moon. You know what I mean? There's something of like, this is why I consider Saturn, the more I stare at these mythologies, I'm like, feminine, feminine, feminine character, lunar, it does, it just is, and I mean, that's what I feel is the essence. Of course, it's a male character, but it embodies a lot of the feminine forces, and I feel this character rising like a crescent moon as the youngest of the children, 12th born of the Titans. Yes,
Can I just tell you something?
it's
Tonight,
a great.
while we're recording, is a crescent moon in Pisces heading toward Saturn.
Okay, so to be
There you go.
raising. There you go. And so, what did he do? Well, he's willing. He's willing to help Gaia. He understands. He's willing to team up with Gaia and be that sort of spokesperson, I guess, for Gaia's troubles, and take the huge risk that his 11 elder siblings were not willing to take, male and female, because there was 6 male, 6 female, that all said, nah, I don't want anything to do with that. And Cronus said, yeah, I do want something to do with that. This is kind of my fate, actually. And so he does come with the crescent moon, and he does come up from the underworld in a sense. You can kind of picture him coming up from the underworld. And when Gaia and Uranus get together, which has now become like an unhealthy relationship between the two, he severs, which is a form of dissociative, like this is a dismembering that occurs. And in that severance of the genitals, so severance of the creation that is Uranus and his ability to create, that his that creative force that is his genitals flies over to the ocean, and on the way drops of blood create the Furies, and then some other drops of blood create the Giants. And then when it lands in the ocean, there's a big frothing. And there's this kind of like moment. This is the most pregnant of moments in mythology of like, what is all this frothing? Something's happening, something's happening, something's exciting here, because this is also traumatic over here. But something's exciting is happening with all this froth. And who comes born perfect out of the ocean? Aphrodite. On
Aphrodite,
clamshells as the
Uranian,
perfect figure.
Uranian,
Aphrodite Urania.
Urania.
Aphrodite Urania is born. And what is because there's Urania is also a muse, and she's the muse of astronomy and astrology. So that's another name where Urania comes up. Aphrodite Urania comes up. So one of the nine muses is Urania, and Uranus himself is the one that was this sky father that gets dethroned, the old father that becomes crusty and old and must become dethroned. Josh is in the golden age, by the way. That moment ushers in the golden age. So I'll offer the question back to you. I know we're coming up to the end of our call, but
Yeah.
where does all of that take you, if we could get a little bit of overtime to your own sense of where that took you in your own consciousness?
Well, where that takes me honestly is to the Aphrodite Urania and something we were talking about before we started recording, which I think maybe kind of ties this all into a something. um which is the contrast between the Aphrodite Urania and the Aphrodite Pandemos, right? And what we were mentioning before, that when we get those confused, it can create a lot of suffering and a lot of difficulty. And yeah, and so something that I think also Uranus can offer to us, especially when we bring in this Aphrodite Urania, is the ability to both um hold space for the perfection of the purity of the divine, of life, of ourselves, of like the that belief that Uranus has that everything is perfect is not wrong, right? It's not incorrect. He's not bad for feeling that. We're not
No.
bad for seeing the perfection of the divine and that spark of that divine that is us. That's needed. That's really, really needed. And similarly, the Aphrodite Urania, and this gets into a whole other conversation we can have some other time, but there's a way of being with love also that is really about the purity and the essence of what it means for you could say like the divine feminine and the divine masculine to come back in their essence, the purity of the essence of what that sacred union is, even the Uranus and Gaia union coming back together, right? In the essence form, be can become an energetic template that is needed in our on our planet. Because if we only do the Aphrodite Pandemos thing, which is also needed, which is also part of why we're here. Like we have to do it, or else that's how life happens, right?
Yes.
That's where the Eros is. That's where all of, I mean, it has to
Yeah.
occur.
Yeah.
But it's in that more that version of love, the Aphrodite Pandemos, which is what we usually associate with Venus and Aphrodite. That's where I feel like that's where we're working out our karma. We're working out our stories. We're working with the earthly plane of life and what emotions all of that, so they're both needed and they're also very distinct,
Yeah.
and to be able to be present with, you could say, like both Gaia life and Uranus purity energy and the Aphrodite Urania that's kind of born out of it. um that is an art that I don't think
Yeah.
we've trained in how to do, right? Like, I don't think there's I don't know of any models really for how to do that. I don't have those models. I would love some models, but it's a medicine that I feel like we have available coming back through us onto the planet in this time, and I think is a medicine available in this highly Uranian, highly Aquarian moment that we're finding ourselves in, and to be able to be with all of it, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, yeah, hold all of it is like it's both really difficult, really challenging, again, because I don't think we don't have a model really, but also so exquisitely beautiful that we have
Yeah.
the opportunity.
Yeah. And I would say, if I'm going to translate that in one of many, many, many ways, one model would be to feel everything earthly, to feel it all in your body, to be with it all, even the most disturbing feelings, and
Yes.
hold that feeling with an overview that Uranus can give you, which is what in process-oriented psychotherapy is called the meta communicator, the one that can see it all. So that gives space to my ability to feel all things, because otherwise I might feel subsumed or consumed by my feeling. And like this feeling's never going to go away. That's why people don't go into depression, right? Because they don't want to be depressed. But the paradox is, if I could only hold my meta communicator, my overseer,
Yes.
then this is just one of many, many, many things I feel. There's the depressed place, there's the joyful place, there's the sad place, all these places are. And so that's how Uranus helps Gaia. It looks down and says, it's okay. It's
Mm.
okay. Because I've got an overview for you. Let me hold
Yeah.
the heaven. Let me just hold the heaven for you. And I'll remind you through reflection that everything is heavenly and ordered and cosmos up here. And then you go through whatever you need to go through down there. And then they just feel like so held by each other. She's loving it. She's feeling that protection she created him for. Plus, he's beautiful to look at. Enjoys that. It's got a beautiful sky. It's like, and then if anybody's, we can go a long time without seeing the beauty of the sky. We can go a long time these days with all the skyscrapers and the pollution and the clouds and everything around and the light on the planet. We don't get to really just look up and marvel at just
Mm.
how exquisite the heavens actually are.
Yeah. And then I'm feeling that Aphrodite Urania, right? Not the Aphrodite Pandemos,
Oh, oh,
but the Aphrodite Urania also like the spark of magic in the stars. That she's for me, she's the energy that the love is so powerful. It's from the beginning of time. It's so powerful. It is what brings back together the feminine and the masculine essence. Um, that has gotten, you could say, torn apart in the trauma of the Gaia world, right? And so if we're only doing the Aphrodite Pandemos thing, it can be really hard to actually come back together as the essence, because you're constantly doing the dance of the other. Like, you need to be doing a dance of an other, which is beautiful and amazing and ecstatic and all kinds of things, but also doesn't allow you to come back to the purity of the essence of the Aphrodite Urania, which I think can really help you remember and embody, oh, what am I actually, from the beginning of time, the wholeness of me that is always here, that's always purity of that version of love, that can hold that space, that forever space, as we do what we're doing. And we're feeling all the things we're feeling, but it's held like that. Yeah, that's part of what she brings for me is,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
amazing.
And that's it. Like I'll just add one thing that something that I was reading last night, that it just has, because a client gave it to me yesterday. I just mentioned the book is In the Dark Places of Wisdom by Peter Kingsley. It's on the book. It's on my desk here. Just started reading it last night. It's like, yes, this thing. And what he refers to is the deep longing that we all have inside of all of us, which is the empty void inside ourselves that we've been taught again and again in the modern day to get away from. And here's a million things you can fill it with. And especially in our Aquarian age, we have 50 million things now we can fill it with. We have right at our fingertips distraction machine that we can just kind of like get intensely distracted. And it is in itself a black mirror, you know, in that it is the void itself that we're looking into, but we don't see that we're looking into our own void, you know. That feeling you get when you've been scrolling too long is actually there's a beauty to it. It's a reminder that there's an emptiness in all of this. And we need to return to the silence and return to the emptiness. And if we can even sit in there for a couple of seconds every day, then you start to build a certain tolerance and a certain ability. And the one that helps us to sit with there is Aphrodite Urania, because we long for her. And that's why she is the morning star and the evening star, depending on the time of the year. And sometimes, you know what, she's gone. And so loss gets us there. That love and loss paradigm gets us there. Right? On the human plane, yes, but if we can put it in its right place, we can understand, like Tantalus, this is something I'll never get, and that is right. This thing that I long for, I'll never get, and that is the correct place for that to be, because then I get to sit inside of the deepest longing inside myself, which feels like a gaping hole, but is actually the gods themselves live there. All of existence lives there, which is why I have to come into contact with that place inside of me that feels dark, disturbing, terrifying. But if I can sit in there, I feel the fullness in that emptiness, and it just permeates my whole being. And I'm left without the other kind of longing, which is addictive, depressive, you know, has a whole host of troubling things that come out of it, the addictive thing, because that's when you're trying to fill the hole. That's also in the Uranus story. The pushing in is the filling of a hole that Uranus himself cannot sit with.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that sums it up. um, yeah. So here we are. Here we are in this moment on this planet, and
So here we are.
beautiful. Thank you. Great. So yes, okay. So on a practical level, if you haven't connected with Chris's podcast, exquisitely beautiful, so much there on the soul's term, on the soul's term. Oh my God, on the soul's terms.
That an
Dot
S.
com.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Yeah.
The link is here with the video, definitely, clearly, and um, join join us for 2 free things coming in March. One is this Becoming Superconductors of Love Summit, which Chris is going to be a speaker in. Melanie Reinhardt is a speaker in. Heather Ensworth, Keone Hanley, blah, 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 Kaylin Castell. Yeah, join us for that for sure. If you haven't yet, this will be to be continued and that summit. And then also toward the end of March, we're going to be holding a free gathering, just you and me together with anybody and everybody. Please join us to essentially go back to the beginning of time and find yourself and find myth and find the stars together. It's going to be beautiful. I feel it. Yeah. And then if you really, really, really want more, come and join us in April. Starting in April, we're going to do a 13-month journey with the stars called The Stars Speak. And Chris is going to be there once a month doing this with us, but regarding the stars. And yeah, way, way, way more to come. We'll say so much more soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's already ready to sign up. If you already know it's a yes, come and join us. All right.
Yes, I'll be there.
It's a yes for me too. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Martha. Thanks for having me on. Hi, Martha's audience. Great to see you again,
Yes,
or see you for the first time, some of you.
yes.
And yeah,
And yeah, we would love, love, love to hear your thoughts, hear your anything, any reflections. Please share.
Yeah, 'cause it's a collective wisdom we're tapping into. So anything that you share, it's small or large, is like really great for us to. Marta always shares it with me. With the comments that come through, she's always sharing it because it means something. You know, this is a collective thing. You and I are just conduit right now for it. Everybody in their own lives are conduit in different times.
Yeah, exactly. Again, Uranus, Aquarius, we're all in this together. That's
Uh,
the
yeah,
whole point.
exactly.
All right. See you all soon.